We're going to start in Mark chapter 16, if you want to turn there. Read a couple of familiar verses, but it's good to see everybody. Hopefully the things that we'll study will be helpful as we think about cultivating relationships with people around us. Hopefully this will be a complimentary lesson to what Brad had to say. There were a few things that as he was speaking, I was thinking, some of the things that I had on my mind, but I think it'll hopefully be different enough and things that we can think about and use in our lives as we deal with other people. In Mark chapter 16, verses 15 and 16, one of the verses Brad did refer to this morning, it says, "And he said unto them, Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned." You know, we as Christians are given a mission. And it's an important mission that we're given, and that's to bring the gospel to those that are around us. It says to take it to them so that they can believe and be baptized. And of course, we want them to be added to God's kingdom. And so that's a challenge that we have, but it takes interacting with others. It takes talking to others in order to be able to do that, right? You know, we can think about some of the conversions that we can see throughout the Bible, especially in Acts, how Philip, he interacted with the Ethiopian eunuch. We can think about Paul and Silas and how they interacted with the Philippian jailer. You have to have some relationships and you have to interact with people around us in order to do what God's asked us to do and spread his gospel to those that are in need of hearing it. But it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes it's going to take a little bit of effort. Sometimes it's going to take a little bit of work. Maybe it's going to take a little bit of thought. And so hopefully we'll think about that tonight. In Matthew chapter 10, in verse 16, Matthew chapter 10 and verse 16, we read here where it says, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." So we go out, and it won't be easy all the time. It's not going to be a piece of cake. There'll be people that we run into that maybe aren't receptive to what we have to say. Maybe they're not friendly. Maybe they'll push back on us. Maybe they'll do other things. But we're going to run into that type of situation as well. But I want to think about what is our approach when we deal with people around us, especially as we think about what our ultimate goal should be and the ultimate goal in sharing the gospel with those that are around us. And so hopefully, like I said, we'll spend a couple of minutes going through a few thoughts on how we can cultivate relationships, maybe some things that we can think about doing. Won't be an exhaustive list by any means. I'm sure you'll be able to come up with twice as many that I have tonight, but maybe some things that we can think about. If you'll turn to James chapter 1. James chapter 1, verse number 19, it says, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath." One of the things that we can do is we can listen to people. We can listen to people. Get to know them. Get to understand what they're thinking, what their beliefs are, why they might think one thing or another. And sometimes, I don't know about you, sometimes I don't listen well enough. And I think that's something we can do in order to create better relationships and open up, hopefully, opportunities. I know sometimes I'm talking to somebody and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, right? And I'm like, they get done talking and I'm like, I have no idea what they just said. I hope it wasn't important. I hope they may ask me some question. But because I'm thinking about what am I saying, to really create a relationship with somebody, you've got to really start off by listening and getting to know people and understanding where they're coming from so that you can create that connection with somebody. And again, with the goal to obviously make a friend and other things, but ultimately be able to share the gospel with them as well. We also need to think before we speak. In Colossians chapter 4, that's part of my problem. I was thinking too much, but maybe not think while they're talking as much. Colossians chapter 4, verses 5 and 6. It says there, "Walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man." So it talks about our speech being seasoned with salt and being always with grace. We need to think about the things that we say. There's things that we can say that can help open up doors, open up opportunities, but we can use our words and the things that we say that'll slam some doors shut really quickly. And so we need to think about the things that we say as we deal with other people. James chapter 3 talks about this some more. James chapter 3, we'll read a few verses here, starting in verse number 2. James 3 and verse 2, it says, "For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able to also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be great, and are driven by fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a manner a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquities. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell." You know, what we say, especially if we're not slow to speak, especially if we're not thinking about what we're talking about or saying, can cause issues. It can hurt and damage relationships. It can end relationships. Can make people angry. Can make people turn away from us. It can make people turn away from God potentially. And so we need to be careful about what we say and how we use our tongue. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 29. Ephesians 4 and 29, it says, "Let no corrupt communication, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." And so we need to make sure that we're saying things that minister grace to those that are hearing us. We use things that are good to the use of edifying. And so as we deal with people around us, let's listen first, and then think about what we're going to say and use our words carefully. They can be powerful, and we need to realize that. We also need to conduct ourselves in a way that people will actually look and say, that's somebody that I will listen to. That's somebody that can be a good example. Brad kind of touched on some of the things that I was thinking about this morning. He talked about Romans 12, where it said, "Recompense no man evil for evil." You know, the things that we do can be really important if we're trying to reflect Christ in our lives and be a good example to those that are around us. We want people to look at us and say, that's a godly person, and I want to be like that. I want to see the joy that they have in their life, and I want to have that same joy, right, and do the same things. In James chapter 3 and verse 13, it says, "Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom." You know, if you're looking at somebody and trying to learn something and try to do something, you want to look at somebody that's at least trying to do that or successful in whatever it is. If I was going to try to lose weight, I'm probably going to go to somebody that's done that and is successful. I'm not probably going to go to somebody that's 600 pounds or something. I want to go to somebody that is successful in what they've done, and I can see that. If I'm going to cook something, I want to go to somebody that knows how to cook and is successful in that. And I watch this guy every once in a while videos when I'm trying to figure out how to smoke something or cook something. He knows what he's talking about. He really sounds like he knows. He's kind of a big guy. He's probably been around some good food in his life. So it's like, okay, this is the guy that probably knows what good food's about and how to cook it. So I listen to him. If I'm going to go learn about money, I'm going to go to somebody that's successful in that, right? And so we need to live a life that reflects Christ in our life and have joy and live a life that reflects that and something that people will want to see and want to have in their lives. If we're downtrodden and we're miserable and we're not happy, it doesn't seem, and we don't reflect kind of the joy that God can have in our lives, people aren't going to really want that. And so let's conduct ourselves in a way that people will see what being a Christian is like and really be drawn to that. We also need to be trustworthy. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 2 through 5, says, "Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let thy words be few, for a dream cometh through the multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by multitude of words. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay." So just kind of thinking about this idea of, following through with something you say, following through with something you promise to do. Sometimes we need to make sure that we're trustworthy. If we can't be trusted in some small thing or some small incident, how's somebody going to listen to us when it comes to salvation? How are they going to listen to us when it comes to something important like that? And so we need to make sure that we are trustworthy and we can be listened to. Maybe an extreme example, if you turn to Judges chapter 11. Judges chapter 11, we're going to read a story here. Starting in verse 30. Judges chapter 11, we're going to read verses 30 through 39. And Jephthah vowed a vow unto the Lord and said, If thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into mine hands, then it shall be that whatsoever cometh forth of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. And so he's made this promise, or said, whatever comes out of the door, I'm gonna offer up if you'll give us this victory over these people. And in verse 32 it says, So Jephthah passed over unto the children of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. And he smote them from Aroer even till thou come to Minnith, even 20 cities, and unto the plain of the vineyards, with a very great slaughter. Thus the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. And Jephthah came to Mizpah unto his house, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances, and she was his only child. Beside her he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her, that he rent his clothes, and said, Alas, my daughter, thou hast brought me very low, and thou art one of them that trouble me. For I have opened my mouth unto the Lord, and I cannot go back. And she said unto him, My father, if thou hast opened thy mouth unto the Lord, do to me according to that which hath proceeded out of thy mouth. For as much as the Lord hath taken vengeance for thee of thine enemies, even the children of Ammon. And she said unto her father, Let this thing be done for me. Let me alone 2 months, that I may go up and down upon the mountain, and bewail my virginity, I and my fellows. And he said, Go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her companions and bewailed her virginity upon the mountains. And it came to pass at the end of the 2 months that she returned unto her father, who did with her according to his vow which he had vowed. And she knew no man, and it was a custom in Israel. So here he has made this promise to God that, if you'll help me prevail, then whatever comes out of my house first, I'm going to offer up. And of course, it's his daughter that comes out to meet him. And so what a tough thing to do, and yet he keeps that promise. He follows through with that promise. And like I say, maybe an extreme example, but I'll be honest, if I came across him later in life and had some dealings with him, I'm probably going to trust this guy. He's pretty trustworthy that he's not going to go back on something like that. I'm pretty sure it's somebody that I can trust. And we need to be doing things in our lives, hopefully never to this extreme, but doing things in our life that makes us trustworthy to others. Sometimes it may be a small thing that we do, but that can be important when we talk about building trust and building relationships with others, so that it can open up again a door to talk about Jesus with other people. We also need to show an interest in others and care for those that are around us and show that we love them. In Romans chapter 12, verse 15, says here, Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. We need to show people we care about them. Rejoice when they're happy or they have something good. Weep with them when they are going through something difficult. Show people that we care. Build relationships with people. If we do that, it's another way that we can make sure that we have an opportunity and build relationships with others, cultivate relationships that we can, again, create a relationship that maybe lasts a lifetime, but also one that gives us opportunity to share God's word with them. In Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3, Philippians 2 and verse 3, Let nothing be done with strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. We need to look at other people's problems and issues, help them out. Don't be so self-absorbed and worrying only about you. I know that's something I can do, and oh, woe is me, I've got this to do and I've got that to do and I'm worried about me, and not looking out at others and seeing kind of the needs that they might have. So we need to look out for others and help them when we have the opportunity. We also want to get along with others as we can. Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs chapter 15. In verse 1. It says, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. We need to be ones that hopefully promote peace, try to be peaceful with other people, try not to turn away wrath. You've maybe been around people that it seems like all they want to do is like argue and create problems and create issues for whoever they're around. We certainly don't want to do that in our lives. In 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 23, 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 23, it says, but foolish and unlearned questions avoid, knowing that they do gender strifes. Sometimes we can get into conversations about things that in the grand scheme of things may not matter that much, right? And we can get in an argument about this or that and the other, and it's really not helping the situation and not building a relationship. Of course, we don't ever want to compromise our beliefs, but we also don't want to argue just for the sake of arguing and hurt relationships. Hopefully we can look for common ground, things that can help us build relationships with others as opposed to tearing them down. Of course, we need to realize, like I said, sometimes this can be hard. It's not an easy thing necessarily. Not everybody's going to be open to hearing what we want to say or what we want to teach them. And so we shouldn't take the denial, the slap, the door in the face, or some of the things that might happen when people don't are not open to hearing what we want to teach them or what we want to share about God. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 11 and 12, it says, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. And so sometimes, despite the work that we do and despite the relationships we might build, some people aren't going to listen necessarily. And some people even may go farther than that and make fun of us or persecute us, if you want to think about it that way. And we just shouldn't take that personally. We need to continue on and continue to do what God's asked us to do. It's going to be challenging to bring people to Christ without having some kind of relationship with them, without having and cultivating a relationship with them. And hopefully through some of the things that we've talked about, we'll think about that as we go forward and look for ways that we can treat people in a way that we can cultivate a relationship, open up opportunities to share the gospel with them. In Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12, the last verse I have, I think. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12. Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Now, this is referred to as the golden rule. One of the things we can do is treat people the way we want to be treated. Sometimes it's as simple as that. And if we do that and use some of the other guidance that the Bible gives us, hopefully that'll make it easier to spread the gospel, to fulfill that great commission that he's given to us. Hopefully we can learn to do that by some of the things that we've talked about tonight and other things that you might be able to think of, to listen, to really listen to people and understand where they're coming from, be slow to speak, be careful about the words we use, hopefully live a life that serves God and reflects that, and people can see that in our life and want to be a part of that, be trustworthy, somebody that people will actually come to and listen to. And of course, we need to show an interest in others, show a love and care for others. That's really what it's about. If we really love somebody, we'll want to spread the gospel and help them obey the gospel and be added to his kingdom. And of course, we want to treat people the way we would want to be treated. If we can do some of those things, I think it'll make it easier to fulfill what God's asked us to do as we look to spread the gospel to those around us. Hopefully these things are helpful to you. Hopefully some things we can use in our lives. We never know the minds of those that are here. There may be somebody that's been properly taught and would like to obey the gospel and be added to his kingdom and be baptized. And if there's one that would like to do that tonight, we certainly invite you to do that. There may be one that needs the prayers of the church for whatever reason. We offer you that opportunity as well if you'll come and have a seat on the front pew as we stand and sing the song of invitation.